Welcome to Rome and welcome to Rome Dispatch. Here we are on day 2 of the Seda Vacante, and I can tell the show's going to begin every day because there are certain bells in Vatican City that ring as 4 o'clock is ringing here. You can perhaps even hear the bells in the background. Day 2, very quiet. We had some press conference today. I'll be bringing you some clips from that, as well as some additional news that Father Federico Lombardi and his 2 translators did speak about. One of the questions asked regarded the Sistine Chapel, because the Vatican has said that they will allow journalists in, they will allow media in to see the Sistine Chapel before the conclave starts. As you know, this is where the 115 cardinal electors will go to elect the new pontiff. Now, the Sistine Chapel is not being readied yet. There are still visitors to the Vatican museums, and the chapel is part of that visit. And it's very interesting actually what they do when they ready the chapel, but it's the cardinals when they go into congregations on Monday. Remember, this is all the cardinals of the church who are in Rome, the electors and the non-electors as well, those over 80. All of the cardinals, when they go into congregation, one of their matters of business will be to decide the conclave and then the date that the chapel will have to be readied. And what is really fascinating about it, I'm sure you've seen images, and we will be bringing you some next week about the chapel. But you have seen probably images of previous conclaves, the cardinals in their red, seated at 2 tables on the 2 longer sides of the chapel. The cardinals who will conduct the business are at a separate table near the main altar. So they have to prepare the comfortable chairs, the tables. Those will be on different levels, so that you'll have 1 row, and the second row of cardinals on one side will be above the other row of cardinals. And what is absolutely fascinating is they do put in kind of a fake floor to hide all the technology that will be in the room to prevent the cardinals from sending or receiving any messages or using electronic devices. And in 2005, as a matter of fact, when the Vatican brought journalists into the Sistine Chapel to double check this fact about no use of technology, and that was the first conclave really ever that had technology like cell phones and so forth. And the Vatican people said, okay, turn on your cell phones and start to get messages, and they could not do a thing. So hopefully that's what is going to work out this time in the chapel. And that's also how the Vatican readies the Casa Santa Marta, the residence in Vatican City. You probably saw some of my videos on YouTube about that residence. And right now we're going to go actually to part of today's press conference about what they did speak about the Sistine Chapel. But in the briefing today, I do want to make one point. It is given by Father Federico Lombardi. You are going to hear Father Tom Rosica. He is the translator in English. And the first question that came up was precisely about the cardinals in Rome.
So in terms of the statistics of the cardinals that are already here, be aware that there are 75 cardinals that live permanently in Rome. Most of them are retired cardinals above the age of 80. We do have confirmation of 66 cardinals that have arrived or are in the process of arriving. They have already informed us of where they're living when they're in Rome. Some will be arriving throughout the weekend and into Monday. Of the 75 in Rome, we don't know the exact breakdown of who is elector among that group. The majority, though, we could say, are those who are retired.
All right, so we heard about the cardinal electors. Some are here, many reside here, many others are coming. We do know of the 117 eligible electors, there will only be 115 who are not coming because of illness. And there are over 80 age-wise cardinals, several of whom will not, for age or illness, also be coming. And another interesting question in today's press conference concerned the canon of the Mass.
In the Eucharistic prayer during this time of the interregnum and awaiting the conclave, there is no mention of the name of the Pope, and for the Romans, there is no mention of the name of the bishop, because he is also the Bishop of Rome. So that is a universal rule that takes place throughout the world. No mention of the Pope during this period, and in Rome, no mention of the bishop as well.
That is a very fascinating point, and I did see the other day on the internet a priest who had learned of this from his bishop in the United States, and he went immediately to the missal he uses during Mass, and he put a piece of tape over what would have been, of course, the name of the Pope. Maybe that's the easiest way to remember in these weeks until we have a new Pope. Now, Cardinal Angelo Comastri, who is the archpriest of the Basilica of St. Peter, he brought up several interesting things for Father Lombardi to tell us in the press conference. One is that maybe some of our visitors have even been to the 5 o'clock daily Mass at the altar of the chair behind the papal altar. And in addition to this year, there's the profession of faith every single day at Mass, because it is the year of faith. And Cardinal Comastri has said that in this interregnum Seda Vacante period, there will also be an additional prayer for the cardinals who are going into conclave to elect the successor of Benedict XVI. And another interesting fact, as you go into the Vatican Basilica, if you were to go down the right-hand aisle where the Pietà is, and then you come to the tomb of John Paul, there's a wonderful chapel on the right, the Blessed Sacrament Chapel, open every day for Mass, and there is Eucharistic adoration here every day from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. And it turns out that the hours in which there would not be Eucharistic adoration, an order of contemplative nuns from Mexico is sending several nuns to fill in those hours so that there will be 24/7 Eucharistic adoration in that chapel. And it's very interesting because tourists are not allowed to go into the chapel of the Blessed Sacrament. You can only go in there to pray. There's a great big drape that covers the door, and so you can only go in that particular chapel to pray. Now, we do have some more wonderful video for you today. We went to a press conference at the North American College. That, of course, is our seminary in Rome. It's on the Janiculum Hill, probably a 10-minute walk from where I am. And we had 3 of America's cardinal electors attending this press conference. We have a Cardinal Sean O'Malley of Boston, Cardinal Daniel DiNardo of Galveston, Houston, and Cardinal Francis George of Chicago. And so they held that press conference, and the very first question to them was, how are you, eminences, preparing for this conclave?
Certainly, I plan to intensify praying about this. That became very obvious to me this morning when the Holy Father said he promised his obedience to whoever the new successor of Peter is. That requires a great deal of prayer and help from the Holy Spirit, to my mind, since personally I have to work this through. Certainly, we're going to do some reading, but I don't know if I'm just going to do some reading on candidates, but I'm going to also refresh my mind on the whole point of the See of Peter and what that means in the life of the Church and the life of faith. And probably some talking with some of the other cardinals. This is my first conclave. Sir, I also have to admit I'm going to try to learn what is it that we do exactly in terms of the number of the steps that you have to do. There are all kinds of formalities, and some of those you have to study and learn about. Some you find out from some of the other cardinals. But that's my immediate response. Cardinal George?
For me, I think there are basically 3 moments. It's a decision-making. It's a matter of choice. So you have to be well-informed. You suggested biographies. I don't have any biographies, but we do have short clips on people, and we have what they say about them in the Honorario Pontificio and official sources. Then you also have the opinions of those who know him, or someone, better than you know the candidate yourself, so you ask for other people's opinions. And then you try to take that in a spirit of indifference, personal indifference, That is, without trying to figure out what's best for you, but rather what's best for the church. As the Pope spoke so movingly about the church again in his last statement to us this morning, that's always at the center of his life. He resigned because he thought it was best for the church. Well, we take an oath to do what is best for the church when we elect someone. So you take that then into prayer, and you sort the information through and ask the Lord to help you to understand from what you've been told, either through books or through contact, who will be the best candidate for the church, whom you're going to put on that ballot when you have to fill it out.
And another question asked was, the Holy Father also spoke to the cardinals about transformation. Where do you feel, if transformation is needed, what areas in the church need transformation?
I'll start out by saying one of the first transformations, I think he was referring to Romano Guardini there, is the personal holiness of the members of the church. We have set out on an amazing and beautiful voyage of evangelization, of making the gospel known, and you have to be yourself filled with the sense of holiness, and I would add, quoting the Gospel of Luke, you need confidence. You need the conviction that comes from knowing Jesus Christ. So I would say that's the transformation where we all begin. From there probably are some transformations ecclesially always. Our ability to preach well, it would seem to me, communications. But those are some initial thoughts I have. Cardinal O'Malley.
Yes, I think the Holy Father was referring to an internal transformation, and I remember at one of his talks he gave, I think a year ago, where he quoted Mother Teresa, where he said someone approached her and said, what are the two most important things to change in the church? And she said, you and me. And I think that's what the Holy Father is talking about, our own personal conversion. This is why the church is here, to call us to repentance, to conversion, to a life of discipleship. And if we do that, then the structures that are at the service of the church will change accordingly.
Well, I think what you said says it very well. He was referring to Romano Guardini, for whom the church is primarily a mystery of faith, and of course that's what the Second Vatican Council said too. And the apostolic faith remains at its core, as you said, what's been revealed by God. We're not free to change that. The theological warrants about what has been revealed and what hasn't can develop, and so we have to go in a way that makes us intellectually critical even of the faith itself. God, who gives us a great gift in the faith, also gives us the gift of intelligence. And so Catholicism has always been involved in that faith-reason discussion, using the principles of reason in order to explain the faith from the time of the philosophers, the Greek philosophers, that were used all the way up to today with cosmological principles. So I think that if you're talking about a more explicit agenda, which is sociological or cultural, well, then we have to meet people where they are. We have to live with the people we love and know, and it's our agenda too. It's in our heart because we're formed by our cultures. But the agenda is very different from place to place. If the church exists in a country that is primarily Islamic, and depending on what kind of Islam it is, that's one set of transformations necessary so that you can continue to live. If it's in a secularized country, however that secularization manifests itself, that's another set of principles. But the church never fits perfectly anywhere at any time, because the gospel is always an original voice. And so it isn't something that comes from us, it comes from God. And there will always be those moments and areas where the society and the church don't meet. A good pastor will mediate those as best he can without betraying the faith or his people, but in such a way that the church remains an active agent for transformation of the world, first of all. We should ask, I think, what in the world has to be changed, and how can the church help that? And then we'll know how we have to change in order to be accessible to the world.
The third question asked of the cardinals was, do they have a list of preferences of candidates when they go into conclave?
Oh, I think we've thought about it now for some time in a rather explicit way. But even before, you look at people whom you know or whom you think are particularly effective. So I would imagine each of us has some kind of a list of primary candidates and then others secondary and tertiary, sure. Yeah, and that's what shapes often the smaller, more intimate conversations. What do you know about this candidate, and could you tell me how he would react to this? What sort of person is he? What's the personality? Sure. We go in, at least I would say I go in, with a list, a rather lengthy list at this point. It isn't winnowed yet, of people who might be considered candidates. You yourselves in the press have mentioned people, and all of them that I've seen, unlike last time, are in fact candidates in my own mind. At least last time, I know some of those people that were mentioned, I thought, I don't think that's a real candidate. This time as I read it, I said, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So you've done your work for us. Thank you.
I would just add one comment to that over 50% of us are new going into a conclave. And though I think we probably have considered names, part of us is just learning. And out of that, it starts to emerge, you know, your whole sense of what's needed for the See of Peter. I don't know, but I presume in the general congregations, we're going to hear from various people from various parts of the world. To my mind, that's going to be illuminating for me. So that though you may have somebody in mind, at the same time, every day that I've been here, some other name has popped up. Did we miss anybody? I'm sorry? Cardinal O'Malley.
I would say I'm comforted by the fact that there are obvious candidates who would be competent popes. You're faced with a number of choices, but I don't think any of us have gone in saying this is who I would vote for. We're still in a process of discernment and prayer and trying to learn more. But certainly there are some wonderful candidates there, and we all recognize their talent and their goodness and their competence.
So now we'll go to the question, will the age of a person influence you, and Benedict's age at his resignation influence you?
I mean, I can see the conclave by deciding to elect an older man, realizing that he's not going to have to carry on this burden into his 90s, and that if he becomes incapacitated, that he would feel permission to be able to resign. So certainly it's a whole new ballgame after this resignation, but it's very difficult to forecast how it will play itself out. People are living longer, and we know that that means that they have diminished energy, and that the task of being the Pope of the Church is an extraordinarily demanding job. And so it could result in the conclave choosing a younger man, but they may say, well, we can choose an older man because if he gets sick or is unable to do it, he would be able to resign. So it's very difficult to forecast.
I would agree. We're right at the beginning of someone who's resigned. We haven't had that experience, though it's always been there as a kind of option. The resignation of a pope and the election of a new pope it's a new moment, but it's not a 24-hour news cycle. And it worries me intensely that people are making all kinds of judgments already when we're really only at the beginning of this. I think we need to be patient. The church is patient. There is an opening now that wasn't there before. I would agree with that. But I'm not so sure that in the long term it will have the effect that some think.
The question that's primarily in my mind, and I think in all the other electors as well, is who is best suited? The question of where he might be from or even his age follows after that. It's secondary, not determinative. There is, to the second question, a point that might influence the development of the office in the future, and that is, if you're in a family, it's relationships that remain and that are constant. If you have a father, he's still your father, even if he's very ill. Function doesn't count in a family, relationships do. And the church is a family, the family of God, we believe. But there is a more modern approach to office, and that is function. And can he function or not now becomes a more important question than it was before. And in the long run, that could shape, possibly, I don't know, I agree that we can't tell yet, but that could have some influence on the understanding of the office itself, both for the office holder and for Catholics in general. But it's too soon, isn't it, to tell that.
What wonderful input from 3 of the United States' cardinal electors. And interestingly enough, perhaps little known fact is that the cardinals of the United States are second in number only to Italian cardinals when we're looking at individual countries. But you know, it is a massive, massive responsibility these gentlemen have, and you can see what they're toying with in their minds these days, what they're talking about before they go into conclave to elect a successor to Benedict XVI. And I may have said this on a previous show, but it's worth repeating, and that is that these cardinals do often get a chance to get to know each other, cardinals from around the world. Cardinals in a particular country, of course, will know each other well. But cardinals are also members of congregations, pontifical councils right here in the Roman Curia. So when they come for meetings, annual meetings, or 2 or 3 meetings a year, they get to know the other cardinal members from around the world of that congregation. Now, here we are at the end of a show. Where has the time gone? I'll be back here tomorrow, as you know. But I just wanted to comment that I've received a lot of emails about the information we gave you yesterday about the Vatican producing stamps during the Seda Vacante and also coins. I will put the complete information up on my blog, Joan's Rome, my EWTN blog, so you can go to that for the denominations of the stamps and of the coins. The coins are not going to be coming out until later, so don't worry about getting them now during the interregnum. And the interregnum stamps, I do know this, they can only be used during the interregnum. Then there are stamps that will come out later, but they can only be used from Rome. There will be 4 stamps. The amount on the stamps will have to do with the distance it will cover. Stamps to Italy, stamps to Europe, stamps to the US, and then postage to Asia and so forth. And the interesting thing is those stamps, again, can be used during the interregnum. They can be bought afterwards for collectors, but not used. And one last little item. Those of you who might already be in contact with the Vatican's Philatelic and Numismatic Office, you can go online. There's a lot of questions answered on the Vatican website, vatican.va. So, and in 6 languages, and I think there's Chinese. So go there if you have questions, and I'll bring further information either here or certainly on my blog about the stamps, coins, how to get them, and I can't mail them for you here from Rome. I just don't even have the time. So we are coming to the end of today's show, and tomorrow we're going to have an interview with Cardinal O'Brien. So please, our American Cardinal O'Brien, who will be going into conclave with the other American eminences. Well, that is just about it from Rome today. Be back here tomorrow. We have a lot of new and interesting things for you. There's some more questions of yours that you've sent via email that I will answer. But right now I'm going to wrap it up for Rome Dispatch and send you back to the studio in Birmingham and to Doug Keck.
Thank you very much, Joan. That's terrific. Rome Dispatch, and of course later today you can catch an encore presentation of Rome Dispatch with Joan Lewis and other special programming. The best way to keep track is go to EWTN.com and check the program schedule in your area. And we'll continue, as Joan indicated, to bring you Rome Dispatch with Joan Lewis every day to keep you up to date on what's happening. And looking ahead toward the middle of next week, Wednesday, March 6th, you'll see us ramp things up with a special Rome edition of EWTN Live at its usual time, followed on Thursday by special Rome editions of The World Over Live and Life on the Rock. Then on Friday, March 8th, our coverage expands with more daily live programming from Vatican City. Beginning at 9 a.m. Eastern, EWTN Vatican Daily with Colleen Carroll Campbell kicks off, offering in-depth analysis and perspective on the day's events. And then at 2 p.m. Eastern, the one and only Raymond Arroyo is there with his guest experts, bringing you all that's happening in the Eternal City with Live from the Vatican. And then on radio, look for Tom Price hosting our daily program, EWTN Radio, Live from the Eternal City. Now, this is a special radio-only program. Check it out. And of course, we always invite you to make EWTN your everywhere source for the latest interregnum and conclave news information. You can follow us on Twitter. Just hit hashtag EWTN-from-Rome. And of course, whether it's TV, radio, streaming on the web with EWTN.com, Roku, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or checking us out on Facebook, please like us. That would be great. EWTN is everywhere. And of course, just in time for the interregnum and the upcoming conclave, download our free EWTN app to watch us on your iPad or iPhone. Plus, the Android version is coming soon. Look for that. And just a reminder to please keep us between your gas and electric bill. This is a family affair, and we will be back tomorrow morning with another edition of Rome Dispatch with Joan Lewis. That's at 10 a.m. Eastern, 1600 Rome time. I'm Doug Keck. Stay with us through our coverage. Thank you.